So thank you for joining us tonight. We are going to be talking about assistive technology in the IEP. We're going to kind of start off talking about kind of the different areas of the IEP and what should be going into each section, along with some tips and ideas. And then we're going to kind of wrap up near the end with some data collection, really talking about how that ties in with the IEP to give some ideas and resources there as well. As Kathy said, she's going to be monitoring the chat, but we will also. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to use that at any time to ask questions or add into the conversation. So my name is Cassie Frost. I am an assistive technology professional and a behavior specialist. I started off in the field, I don't even know how many years ago now. These last couple of years have gotten me a little thrown off. But I started off as a behavioral specialist and then moved into assistive technology about 7 years ago.
Hello, everyone. Well, my name is Lucretia Carson, and I'm an assistive technology professional as well. And I'm grateful to be here with you today. I've been working in the area of assistive technology, specifically as a program support teacher for about 8 years or so. I used to use it in the classroom, and now I'm just grateful for the opportunity to empower a lot of teachers to support students. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to jump right in, and we're going to get you started with a hands-on activity. It won't take long. It's just to kind of get your juices flowing. I want you to think about a student. Think if you had a student who was using some of the tools that are listed in this data collection activity. If this student was using a particular tool, think about a percentage that they were using the tool, or a percentage that they are completing their work. How many times have they used this tool? So of course, you are going to think about maybe a student that you have in mind who needs help with writing or a particular task, and then just kind of guess, give it a number. So this student, he completes his work maybe 25% of the time. And he uses these items maybe 3 out of 5 times, or 3 to 5 times a week. So we're just going to have a student in mind, or come up with some different numbers, and we're going to complete this Google form. And what we're going to do is we're going to use data later on in our presentation, and we're going to talk about how we can use this type of method to help us collect data with the students that are using AT. So I can put this link in the chat again if you didn't catch it the first time. Does anyone have any questions?
So we'll just give everybody a couple of minutes here to do that before we move on. When we start moving on, if you haven't got this finished yet, you can definitely go back and do it later. And I'm sure Lucretia will share this again, maybe midway through the presentation if we have anybody else join. But if you have time right now, we'll give just a couple of minutes to get it completed.
Okay. And Cassie, if you don't mind, I just, is it okay if I say a few words?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, so again, while you are completing this form, it shouldn't take very long at all, but think about the students in your classroom, or the students that you serve, or maybe even your children if you're a parent, and how often they're getting their task completed. Think about that, and then let's think about maybe you have students that are using particular tools. You can think about how often they are using tools. Think about those things as we are gearing up to go through our presentation, because that's really going to give you a good foundation to process the information you're receiving today. When our children or our students are engaging in their learning, we want to make sure that we maximize their access. So we want you to kind of process that and think about what's going on where you are, or even for you to help us create some scenarios.
Okay, I think we will keep moving. I am going to make just a short announcement here to apologize in advance. If you do happen to hear any barking type noises in my background, I think my mic's pretty good at filtering it and my family's trying to help. But I did end up with a puppy in my household recently, and he is wonderful and sweet, but likes playing at just the wrong times. So if you hear a puppy bark here or there, it's because she's teasing her older sister, and they're having enough of him running around trying to chew on them. So just a little bit of a public service announcement there. Okay, so the very first thing we want to talk about when we're talking about assistive technology in the IEP is, why is it there in the first place? And beyond it just being really good for kids, right? Assistive technology is something that helps our students be successful in school, but there also is a legal component to this. And that very first line is probably the one that I cite most often when I'm talking with teams. And that's just that the team that develops an IEP, so all of the people around the table, must consider whether the child requires assistive technology devices and or services. Now, this is something when you get an IEP team together, a lot of times there's already kind of a determination, or teachers kind of have an idea if they feel like it's necessary or not. But it's really easy to overlook this section in the IEP or kind of brush it off and say, oh, no, yes, but not really do that whole consideration process. So not that it has to be super long or involved, but it is important to recognize that legally, every IEP team must consider whether the child requires assistive technology. This comes from the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, so IDEA. And these are those requirements that the law states. It says that each public agency must ensure that assistive technology devices or assistive technology services, or both, as those terms are defined by law, are made available to a child with a disability if required as part of their child's special education related services, supplementary aids and services. So once the team determines that assistive technology is needed, once it's written into the IEP, the team and the school must provide those resources for a student. So this whole process is really important in getting these tools to our students and meeting our legal obligations. So for our definitions, and this becomes kind of important because a lot of times when you're sitting down with an IEP team, if you're with an IEP team that isn't as familiar with assistive technology, it's really easy to kind of think of assistive technology as either those more obvious or involved assistive technologies like wheelchairs, FM systems, or perhaps some of the more common ones like speech to text or text to speech. But it's important to recognize exactly how broad this assistive technology category is. So the law says assistive technology device means any item, piece of equipment, or product system, whether acquired commercially off the shelf, modified, or customized, that's used to increase, maintain, or improve functional capabilities of a child with a disability. The term does not include a medical device that's surgically implanted or the replacement of that device. So this means that if you are working with a student who struggles with reading and you have worked to develop some sort of paper system that's cut just right, that the student uses to highlight words, that would be considered assistive technology. Okay, it's not acquired commercially, but it's modified or customized. It's something that you've created for that student and that student uses as assistive technology. So this category is much more broad than a lot of IEP teams may consider it when you're sitting in that meeting, kind of trying to move through the IEP process. So oftentimes it's a good idea just to kind of have this in your head in advance, to think through your student's day and recognize, are there things that they are already using or could benefit from that maybe the team needs to discuss. The other area of assistive technology is AT services. Now, this is actually the same type of service that you'd be looking at maybe as an OT service, an SLP service, a PT service. Assistive technology service is a person. So it's not the actual item, it is a person that is going to provide services that directly assist the child with a disability in either selecting, acquiring, or using an assistive technology device. So this means if you have a student that has started with a new type of assistive technology and they need instruction in that, that would be an assistive technology service. If it is a student that the team feels could benefit from assistive technology, but they're not sure what's out there or what the student could use, and that's going to be then a person or an assistive technology service that's going to help the student select and acquire the assistive technology. So again, this is going to be a person. So where we have the AT device, which is the item or the assistive technology itself, AT service is going to be the person, the time that a person is spending to assist a child with a disability in selection, acquisition, or use of AT. Okay, so when we're talking about AT consideration, this can be kind of a nebulous thing, right? All AT teams must consider if a student needs assistive technology, devices, and/or services. So sometimes sitting at an IEP table or with an IEP team, this could be a very formal process, or this could be very informal. So if a student is already using assistive technology and they're very successful with it, this might be a fairly informal conversation saying that this is what the student's currently using. They're using it well. Do they need any additional support with it? Yes or no? And are they going to continue to be using it if it's working well for them? Pretty informal, pretty short. The IEP team is going to have that short discussion, and it's going to be written into the IEP, and the team has considered it. This also could be a formal process, meaning the IEP team, AT and IEP, my tongue is getting tied here. If the IEP team determines that maybe they think the student needs assistive technology, but they don't know what, there may need to actually be an assistive technology evaluation. And the team may need to go through more intense steps to determine if the student really does need assistive technology and what they may need. And that's where we're going to go into things like the set process, the quiet. All of those additional tools are going to help with the more formalized process of determining AT needs if it's not something that the team is really familiar with already. So in that instance, if the team is sitting down at the table and they think the student needs assistive technology, but maybe just aren't sure what the student needs. So the student hasn't already tried different things. There's not something that's already working. That's when an assistive technology evaluation is going to come into play. And that's where somebody that has knowledge of assistive technology is going to work with the team and with the student through the set process. So looking at what the student needs, looking at the environment, looking at strengths, looking at what tasks do they need to do, and then looking at and determining and trialing assistive technology. All of that's not going to happen during an IEP meeting. So the initial consideration may just be determining that there is an AT evaluation that needs to be done, and the team agreeing that that's going to happen before the next meeting. And that could be a meeting that comes sooner or later, depending on what needs to be written in.